All right. Hello, everyone. It's Dr. Shirley Davis. So excited to be back again with you. We told you we were going to be bringing you some amazing thought leadership from some amazing thought leaders. And this is just another opportunity to bring them before us to now really celebrate and talk a bit about when we talk about November being the recognition of Military and Family Appreciation Month. So that's what this is going to be about today. We're honored to recognize and celebrate the service as well as the sacrifice, and even those who are experts or who have been very connected to U.S. military veterans. And so I don't know about you, but I don't know if you knew that there's over 18 million veterans living in the United States today, representing about 7% of the working population. Veterans come from all walks of life, all skills, backgrounds, all leadership backgrounds. They are resilient. They bring an amazing contribution to our communities and to our workplaces. And their training instills in them so many of the strong problem solving, creative thinking, innovative ways that we work, adaptability, and certainly a deep sense of loyalty, commitment, teamwork, and responsibility. So we are thrilled today to have some of my friends with me and some of those that you probably already know too. So I've got an amazing panel here with me. Let me introduce them. And then what we're going to do is just have a conversation about just the current state of military and the workforce, and what are some things that companies are doing well, what are some things that they need to do better, and what are things that we can learn from some of our own veterans. Those are advocates of veterans, and things that we need to do as DEI leaders, as HR practitioners, and as general people leaders. So I am, first of all, so honored to bring with you my first panelist, which is my sister friend I know of about 15 years, Miss Vernice Armour, also known to us as Fly Girl, or I call her V. She's America's first Black woman combat pilot. Yes, I said America's first Black woman combat pilot. She served 2 tours of duty in Iraq as a Marine. She's also a diversity liaison officer to the Pentagon. She did that work for a number of years. And after her military service, she revved up her career in the private sector as an entrepreneur, consultant, and a business leader, as well as a best-selling author. But she was also a police officer. So I know she may hit on some of that story as well. But she's been featured on Oprah, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and so many other media organizations. And she's worked with a number of corporations like Walmart, Bank of America, Shell, T-Mobile, all kinds of organizations. So welcome, my friend, my sister, V Fly Girl Armor. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. You look, you made that sound so exciting. I need to take you on the road with me.
Hey, hey, I'm one of your
PR,
biggest
PR is
champions
another
and
talent right
advocates.
there.
I love it. I love it. So I've also got another friend of mine. I think Greg, me and you have probably known each other my days of SHRM. So I would have gone back to at least 2005 and six. So we worked together on a number of projects and a number of events. And Greg is the owner of Greg Jenkins Consulting. He's also a U.S. Army combat veteran. He's a service disabled veteran who loves serving as a dedicated and passionate DE&I consultant, trainer, facilitator, coach, and mentor. And his organization provides DE&I expertise in strategy and content development. And he also provides pro-social behavioral research, marketing, and assessments. And he does a lot of transitioning and mentoring for veterans as well as businesses. Hello, Greg. Good to have you on with us today.
Shirley, so glad to be here. I'm gonna echo V. I got to take you with me wherever I go. So it is a
For
really great
sure.
introduction, but really glad to be here, Shirley. Looking forward to the conversation,
Thank
and
you.
yeah, just wonderful to be here.
Yes, yes. And look, this is easy to do. And then Emily Grandinetta, who though she's not a veteran, she is a nationally acclaimed expert on military to civilian transitions. She's helped a lot of organizations, countless veterans, overcome some of the pitfalls and be able to accelerate the cultural learning curve. She literally wrote the book on it. Her best-selling and award-winning book called Field Tested: Recruiting, Managing, and Retaining Veterans has been a roadmap for companies such as Accenture, Booz Allen Hamilton, Sodexo, Comcast, Merck, Blackstone. So it's so many of them. And she's also the author of her latest book, an award-winning book as well, called, again, At Ease. I love it. I love it. I love it. Emily has received formal acknowledgement for her contributions to the veterans employment from the likes of President Barack Obama, John McCain, U.S. Army veterans, retired Lloyd Austin, remember Raymond Odinero, and John Campbell. So again, Emily, welcome. So grateful to have you and good to see you again as well.
But you reminded me of some things.
Look, I probably know more about y'all than y'all know about y'all, because I do a lot of studying. I follow you all as well too, and I'm just grateful for the contributions that you make to the workforce, as well as to veterans and veterans families. And then last but not least, I want to have Eric on with us as well, because Eric Peterson, many of you know, Eric and I have worked together. We've known each other since 2006 when I hired him to work with me, beside me, at the SHRM DEI offices, and we did a lot of work together, and we are so pleased to be working together again. So we are connected to the hip. But Eric, maybe many of you don't know, but Eric is actually he was raised in a military family, and so we've got various perspectives. So we've got an expert who writes and coaches military families, but then we've got one who's a child who grew up in the military family but has not actively served, and then we've got two other veterans. So we've got a good plethora of perspectives to be able to share today. So thank you all again for being here. Let's get this started. So what I want to hear from each of you that joined, right? So this will be Greg and to V, is what inspired you to join the military, and what branch again did you serve in? Greg.
So yeah, so Shirley, what inspired me to join the U.S. Army really were economic reasons. So it was the early 80s, and we were in the middle of a pretty big recession. I know that dates me immediately. So I was going in as, you know, I needed to find a career, a pathway forward. What I didn't expect was how much I was able to adapt and appreciate, and then, you know, really became committed to, you know, the duty, the loyalty, the commitment, the dependability, the teamwork, the leadership. And it was really an experience that I didn't necessarily set out wanting to have, but so glad that I did.
And why the Army? You know, I know that there's multiple branches, but be interested in your selection process for which one and why.
Yeah,
not trying
why,
to create
Greg?
any competition, not trying to create
Look,
a
why,
debate
Greg?
here,
Why the Army?
Because it was the closest recruiter's office that I had, that I could see.
Okay.
Sorry, Marine Corps. If you would have been a little bit closer,
you might have been an ex-Marine.
yeah,
Okay.
fellow veterans. So yeah, from the same.
All right, Fly Girl. Venus, tell us a little bit again, just a bit about sort of your service, why you selected that particular branch as well.
Right. Well, full transparency and honesty. When I got to college, I was totally broke, and I saw a flyer that said free trip to Mardi Gras. I said, that's for me. And I had to join Army, ROTC. And that's what sparked the flame. My dad was Marine, 3 tours Vietnam. My grandfather was World War II, Mumford Point Marine. So I said, I could do that. I got military in my family, of course. And I also saw it as a strategic advantage because I wanted to be a police officer, but I couldn't be a police officer till I was 21. And I saw the military as a you know, it's the boys club, the male dominated field, right? The men's club. So I said military would be a strategic advantage for me, a feather in my cap, if I were to go into the military first. And when I turned 21, I had all that experience. So Greg, I enlisted in the Army.
There you go. That's what I'm talking
Jackson.
about.
I did get onto the police department, but while in the Army and going to leadership advance camp, I saw a Black woman in a flight suit. And now I call it the tangibility of the possibility, right? I could see her,
Yeah.
touch her, talk to her, ask her questions.
Right.
And it planted a huge seed. So when I decided to leave the police department, because I said I could always be a cop, you don't always have the opportunity to be a combat pilot. I decided to go into the Marine Corps, not just because my grandfather and my dad were both Marines, right? And I just realized this today at an event I was at. We were all in conflict, right? I said, okay, I see the light. Now I'm going active duty in the Marine Corps, right?
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that was the catalyst for my service.
Well, and part of yours, it sounds like too, V, was because you also had a point of reference, having you talked about your grandfather and those also having been in the Marines, so that made sense for you. But also, I'm hearing from both of you is that a lot of that was what's the opportunity right now, and I've got a need,
Absolutely.
and they're there to fill it. And I love V what you said too. It was the tangibility of possibility, seeing someone else that represented what you were thinking about, dreaming about, and hopefully one day could become, and you did. Good.
Right. And honestly, I wasn't even thinking about it before I saw her. My
Wow.
battle buddy, young white female on an aviation contract. Again, I wanted to be a police officer, right?
Yeah.
When I was in ROTC. So when we got to career day, she wanted to go to the aviation tent. I wanted to do anything where I could shoot a gun or blow something up, like 100%. And after going to artillery and sniper platoon and Delta Force, really all the things women couldn't do in the early 90s because of the combat exclusion laws, right? Like it was literally against the law. Around 12:30, she said, Armor, can we please go to the aviation tent? I said, black people don't even fly. That's not true. Tuskegee Airmen, Bessie Coleman, right? But again, that goes back to the tangibility of the possibility
right.
and access and exposure, which
Yeah.
is why we're having this panel today, which is
That's
giving
right.
your audience and your folks, your crew, your community, access and exposure to some veterans in this conversation that they might not otherwise have. So I'm honored
Good.
to be here.
So, Emily, I know you didn't actively serve, but what was it that drove you to really become an expert, to dive into this, to make the contributions that you make as a coach, consultant, and helping people make that transition? What's your story?
Yeah. Well, first, I love both of your stories, and I want to thank you for your service, Bernice and Greg.
Honored to serve.
Very sincerely. Yeah. I do have a lot of Army in my family, but that's not what got me involved. I was a business consultant at Booz Allen with Eric, and that long time ago, undisclosed number of years ago.
Yes.
And they were doing a ton of strategic hiring out of the military. I was aligned with the Department of Defense sector, and I was called in by the big boss of that division, and he said, "You're our consultant. We can't hold on to these officers. They're failing.
Wow.
And we're spending a lot of money. They have to sit on the bench for a year because they're radioactive. They can't go back into their environments for a year. And so you need to figure out what's happening." And this was way before I actually wrote the first book. This was in the early 2000s. Nobody was really talking about military transition. So I did an internal study to figure out what was happening. Organization development was my background. And so I just did a study. And I came up with something really interesting at the time. Now, not so much, but at the time, there was this thing called military transition. It seemed to be a thing.
Yep, I remember that.
Anyway, it was all about the culture, and no one was talking about it. And it was very eye-opening to all of us at the time that, a leader in the military could certainly be a leader in a corporation. And what they bring with their leadership expertise is a command and control style of leading. And if that style of leading doesn't fit your culture, then their capability to lead and experience leading won't even have a chance, won't rise even to the surface, and there's no way they can be successful. And so it was really kind of the needless, this may sound a little bit like an exaggeration, but it isn't in my experience, the needless suffering of people who are leaving the military at the top of their career, coming
Yeah.
into a job with all the promise and, the hope, and then just having just a lot of difficulty and a hit to the self-esteem and confidence. And anyway, so it became just a huge mission for me to figure this out. And obviously it's still an issue today, or I wouldn't have kind of come back to it with this new book at ease.
Thank you. And you're right. It's still an issue today. It's, the need is there for companies to understand not only the gifts, strengths, and talents that veterans bring to the workforce, but also to understand how to create the workplace culture where they're able to make that, like you said, to be at ease even in the workplace. Because we talk about belonging, right? We talk about inclusion, we talk about having a seat at the table and feeling valued, but also feeling seen. And not enough companies are doing that. And I think you're right. Your role as an expert and as an advocate and ally is key and critical. I want to go to Eric real quick too, because I know Eric grew up in this and moved around quite a bit, lived all over the world. So Eric, tell us a little bit about your experience growing up and how that shaped and formed who you are today and how you see the world.
Yeah, it's funny hearing all these stories. It's kind of reminded me of the hardest thing to do when I got to the workplace is just simply answer the question, so where are you from? Because that there was a million ways I could have answered that. And what usually I just said, I'm from the Navy, because I grew up in the Navy. But I was born in California. Before I was even a year and a half old, we moved to Spain, and then we moved to DC, 5 years in Japan, Newport, Rhode Island, Hawaii, and Scotland, before I ended up in college in Washington State. And every time we were overseas, we lived on or nearby a military base, which is a little pocket of America, but obviously really exposed to all these things, all over the world. And my dad had an interesting career in that he was in both kind of the Atlantic and the Pacific theaters. And so, I got to see a lot of what was going on. Every place was a little bit different. There was one point when I was living in Japan, the most common ethnic identity in my school by far was biracial kids with white dads and Filipino moms.
Wow.
And and I was, as a white kid, I was not in the majority in that particular school. Moving to Hawaii, it wasn't really prepared for, what. So one of the things that really I think I bring to the diversity field is a real knowledge of what being white is. When you're white and you've lived in Japan for 5 years, you get what that is in a way that a lot of white people who grew up in the US don't necessarily have an appreciation for. And I think just in general, it was just all the moving around for us, everyone, people say either it was, oh my God, I'm so jealous. That must have been an amazing childhood. And I was like, it was okay. And it had some drawbacks. Or people would say, oh my gosh, you had to move all the time. That must have been so rough. And it was like, it was okay. I mean, because we got it, we just, we knew that was our life. In fact, if we were anywhere for a third year, we were like, are we moving soon? We started to get the itch, because it was just, we were not used to ever staying in one place for that long. So the adaptability, yes, the cultural competence, yes, the kind of awareness of the globe that we live on, as opposed to just whatever little pocket you grew up in. But also just kind of an interesting thing is that my parents both grew up in a small town in Idaho. And my dad, he's told this story enough. I don't think I'm telling tales out of school. He joined the Navy because he said, I'd rather be sunk in a boat in Vietnam than crawling through the jungle on my elbows. And so he thought that just sounded a little bit more appealing. So he signed up with the Navy before he was drafted in the Army, never meant to stay, but made a whole career out of it. And my parents always looked at my sister and I like, who are you? These two little aliens. Like we raised these kids with all of these small town Idaho values, but they didn't stick. They were raising two little global citizens who had a very different outlook on the world than they had. And so, it is something that it's a very hidden piece of diversity. You're right, Shirley. A lot of people who work with me have no idea that that's a big part of the first 18 years of my life. That's my story.
That's right.
It's not a usual story, but it's something that I still colors every single thing that I see. It's absolutely changed my worldview permanently.
Wow. Speaking of that, I'd love to hear from each of you. Just give us maybe the top 3 to 5 skills that you feel like being in the military. What are some of those most valuable skills that you gained and now apply in your civilian life?
Leadership, adaptability, and grit. I didn't even have to think
Wow.
about that. Like,
Which, as a matter of fact, you talk about grit a lot, and I know you talk about being gutsy, right? Making
right.
gutsy moves, and even as Eric was just talking about, right? We talked about adaptability and change and resilience and all of those things that comes from your upbringing in the military as well. You're so fashion conditioned to be that, and now you're able to leverage it in your civilian life. And I've seen you,
Yeah.
and at work with that type of, as you said, leadership. Yes, and certainly I've seen your just having grit. Got it.
Yeah. And, you know, I
What about
think,
you, Greg? I'm sorry.
I was going to
Were
say, I
you gonna
think,
say V?
and even down to the branches that we chose, right? Like
Mhm.
the Marines go in first, they're hard hitting, right? The chaos and the fog of war, and then the Army comes in and they take over and they organize things and all that stuff, right? And I remember speaking with you, and I'm like, just leave, let's go, come on, you got this. You were like, okay,
I know,
there's some
right?
things I want to put in place. So I was the Marine Corps and you were the Army.
I know.
And I never even
But
thought about that
I was
before.
thinking about being an entrepreneur, and V was one of my sounding boards and my thought partners. And she and I, by the way, we go way back to our Les Brown days. That's how we met.
Yeah.
And we were both under the Les Brown Speaker Network training and all of that. And then she went off, did her thing independently. And I was still working in corporate America. And I was like, I want to do that one day. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And it
One
took me
day. Oh my
years
God.
before I did it. And she's like, you just need to jump. And I'm like, yeah, but I got to think this out. I got to analyze. I got to strategize. And she was like, grit. Nope, you got to go. And so I
But
eventually got there.
but you know what I love? Like my plan could have worked. Your plan absolutely worked. You blew it out of the water. And to me,
Mhm.
that's the strength and the advantage, the strategic advantage of diversity, right? Because
Yeah,
we can have different plans, different angles, different thought processes,
that's right.
and it comes out even better on the other side because of it. So
That's right. Hey, Greg, what about you? So she talked about Marines come in and then the Army comes in after that. What are some of the skills for you that have worked in your civilian life that you gleaned in the Army?
Well, the three that come to mind immediately are leadership, team building, and diversity, equity, and inclusion. And DEI, I'm going to make that into one. Regardless of branch, the United States military is a leadership making machine.
yeah,
And their ability to take a diverse bunch of people, stick them together, get them to look at the same point on the horizon, and get them shoulder to shoulder to go accomplish missions is really pretty amazing.
it's true.
And
Wow.
so that learning from my leaders, learning how to do that, which means obviously it implies that not only do you have to lead, without leading, you have to have a team. So as a leader, you get to understand about team building. And we're talking about the raw materials of being these men and women of white and black and brown and Asian and biracial, multiracial from a number of countries around the world.
Right.
As long as you're meeting the standards and the security protocols, we got folks in the military from all over the place. And so that, and the thing that was interesting was I didn't realize how much of an asset DEI was in uniform. It was coming out, and now working with organizations, and I'm sure Emily, well, everybody here can attest to, is that you have organizations that don't have a military background and have not worked in very diverse teams in the United States and other places, and how much
That's
of a skill
good.
set that has become, which
Yeah.
really is part of the reason why I do the work I do today as a DEI consultant. So.
Yeah, that's a very good observation, is that being in the military and serving has exposed you to so
Oh,
many aspects,
tremendous
yeah,
thing.
of
Yeah.
diversity. Even though I don't hear it as much celebrated that way, but it has prepared you to
Mhm.
be in any environment and able to adapt in any environment, right? And be able to build a team that looks like all of us here on the call and more diversity, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that's cool. Emily, what about your experience now serving military families and veterans? What has been some of the skills you've seen be celebrated because of their work? And then what have you learned from that?
Well, I'd love to take a little bit of a different angle on your question, Shirley. Based on
Yeah.
my work with organizations, mostly I work with organizations who want to hire, or they have hired veterans, or they've committed to hiring a massive amount of veterans, but they really don't know how to get the value and retain them, right? So if it's okay with you, I'm just going to speak from the kind of organizational point of view, the business point of view.
Absolutely.
Good perspective. These are strengths that I talk to employers about, that I think a lot of veterans don't even really realize it. They don't see it in themselves. The service members coming out, they don't even see this about. So I talk about it in my book because everyone should know. There's a I would say strategic mindset. So sometimes that comes across as a surprise because they're like, well, they're very tactical, and in the military, you just do one thing after another. It's like, well, maybe, but the fact is, the military is a massive organization, and every veteran has been part of that organization and part of making that massive thing work. And so by definition, they have a view of complexity and strategy that's pretty amazing and unusual, and you don't see in just an average civilian job candidate, right? And related to that, but specific, is the ability to bring order to chaos. Okay, so they come from a massive organization with 1 million moving parts. At any given time, you're moving hundreds of people across the sea to another, world to quickly get up to speed and execute. And how do you do that? Well, it takes a lot of bringing organization to chaos. And so the way that helps you as an organization is that when you have maybe a new manager, a young manager, first time, who's got a team that's dysfunctional and they have a lot of work that's unorganized and it just seems overwhelming. My guess is you put a young veteran in that, and they can quickly kind of assess the situation and see a path towards, execution, a path to simplicity through all that chaos. And so I've just seen that play out, over and over and over and over again. And again, that's something that a lot of service members wouldn't necessarily recognize in themselves because they're doing it. They're just what they're living in, right? But it's something that when I work with them and they learn to kind of present themselves in terms that an organization or a business values, then they're competitive in a way that other candidates in their age groups aren't. And then the third one, I would say, a lot of people say, well, we want to hire from the military because they're good leaders. They're really good leaders. And I mentioned the complexity there, around, okay, yes, they are strong leaders and they bring a very distinctive leadership style. And that's the piece that is going to either make them or break them, depending on your culture. So the piece that the civilian really needs to work on in order to leverage the leadership that they get with a veteran is they need to translate culture. They need, it's not a big deal. It's not a reason not to hire veterans. It's something that you probably need to be doing a better job of with all your new hires. But especially with veterans, because they're bringing a language all their own, a context all their own. And it's not intuitive to kind of make that translation. So part of what we do when we work with organizations is we help them to be cultural translators.
That's cool. And you need that because you have to be, when we talk about cultural fit, I don't like the words itself because it seems to be about conforming. But I always tell people who are looking to apply for a job or they're seeking a role in a position is that you do want to make sure that your values are aligned with the company's values, right? And you do want to select people who have qualifications and they have experiences and backgrounds that's going to add value to the organization. But when we talk about cultural fit, a lot of times it's been associated from a negative connotation of we need you to come in, conform, and be like us. And take away your authenticity. And that's not what we're talking about at all. I know, Eric, you mentioned a couple of things that you learned, being a MK, right, a military kid,
Mhm.
and things like adaptability, change. Is there any other skills that for you have really contributed? Because I would say, having been your former boss and your current one now, that you've been an amazing talent and very creative, very analytical. You've always been just committed. You've been passionate about things that you love to do, and always really willing to share great ideas. But what about you, additional skills you learned as an MK?
Okay. First of all, I'll just say brat, weirdly, is completely acceptable. Like I'm a Navy brat, and that's just it's the word that we use, and it's fine. Like it's a term of endearment, it's a love language. It's odd, but it's the way it is. So I answer to both.
Brett became quite popular these last couple of
Well,
months,
yeah,
right?
yes, it has. Yes, it has.
Hmm.
Different kind of brat, but yes. So yeah, I think that adaptability and cultural competence are the things that I mentioned before. If I
Yeah.
could add two more, I would say, relationship building,
Mhm.
because you get
Mhm.
to a new spot and you've got to build relationships really quickly. And you find a way to do that. And as a kid, it was, you not only wanted to make good working relationships, but you wanted a new best friend. You wanted friends that were really, so there was that and the ability to do that and kind of make those rock solid relationships work fairly soon, but
Yeah.
also correspondingly the ability to let go of stuff. And I will say that among just my colleagues and my friend group, I wondered for a while where I picked this up, and then somebody said, Eric, well, it's the way you grew up, and it made sense to me. Just the ability just to realize when something's over, it's over. I just let it go.
And not to become maybe so, attached to something, right?
Yeah.
Knowing that things change, people
So
change,
I wish
and
I could tell you that I was pen pals with every single kid that I called my best friend growing up. That did not happen. They moved, I moved, we just got new. And when a chapter closed, it was over. Now Facebook has been real interesting because I've reconnected with lots of these
Right.
people that I've known for, that I lost touch with forever, so I thought. And that's been kind of interesting. But yeah, just the ability to kind of say, you know what, this has reached its end point and we can now move on and just, uh fresh slate. And I think that it's a skill that I think is under recognized and sometimes has come in real handy for me in
that's
my
good,
life.
especially with change, right? When change
Mhm.
happens, being able to let go of some things and not
Being able to
hold
let go
on
of
to
what
it
was
forever.
as a part, that's part of change management is
Yep.
one side is embracing what's new, but letting go
Yep.
of what used to be that is no longer there. It's an emotional skill that not that me and my fellow brats we've got down pat because we lived it.
I
It's just
love it.
there.
May
You know,
I
I
ask a
have an
question about
example.
that?
Oh,
Yeah, I
sorry.
saw two of them. So I heard Emily and then I heard V.
Emily, do you want to go first?
Well, I don't know, Eric, if you would mind if I shared a story that I think really illustrates a little bit about the
Hmm.
military style. And so if it's okay with you, I'll apologize
Yeah.
later. But when we worked together many, many, many moons ago at Booz Allen, for a while, I was your manager. And I remember specifically a conversation we had where I had to say that you were too calm. And you said, what? And I said, well, you need to convey urgency. Like when someone over here is freaked out and they're way senior to you, you need to also kind of be a little freaked out. And do you remember that?
I kind
And
of, yeah, it's coming back to me.
you said, so wait a minute, are you telling me that like I'm now doing wrong because I'm calm and I can see that everything's going to be okay? And I was like, this doesn't feel right to me either. But I guess
Wow.
that's what I'm saying.
Wow.
And it was good advice. I will say it's good advice because people needed me to kind of match that emotional energy so that they knew I was
Mhm.
really hearing them.
Mhm.
And so I've taken that advice, but at the same time, what I was saying back is, I have a long view that just, things are going to be okay. They're going to work out, and that's something that my upbringing definitely gave me.
That's
And that's
great.
what I'm talking about when I
Good
say
story.
you can have that strategic view. So,
Yep, that's right. V, what were you gonna say?
Well, it's a tie-in with what Emily shared as well, because
Mhm.
I have the ability to, I moved a ton as a kid. I never went to one school more than 2 years, right? I think one school 3 years. So it was move, move, move. So when Eric, you said it's a 3-year itch, I've been in Atlanta now for 9 years, and people are like, oh, are you going to stay there? And I'm
Guys,
like,
been that long? Really?
no. Like, I feel like it's time to go, right? But where am I going to go? I don't know. But
Come
the
on here
whole
to
thing
Tampa.
about right, don't move to Tampa. No, the whole thing about being able to let go and move on. So many times people will confuse with Pollyannaing it or brushing over or just seeing with rose-colored glasses, sweeping it under the rug. And at a certain point, you're going to build up and you're just going to explode because you never processed it or dealt with it. But I believe we just process it different in the first place, right? Now, not everybody is like that, because you do see some cases where it's swept under the rug, wasn't dealt with, and then it impacts mental health, right? But for the most part, so adaptable where it's like, if no one is shooting at me, we're good. Let's just figure it out.
Perspective.
Yes,
Perspective.
yes.
And I have to
I concur with that
say,
comment.
Right. So
I
when
have
I
to
share my
say-
message in corporate America about permission to engage in one mission, one goal, one team, and how do we navigate the challenges and obstacles, how do we do it together? It really comes from a place of knowing, like, no, we really can do this. We just have to get there, and it's okay.
That's right.
yeah, I
Yeah,
have to say,
too,
I had a
Eric,
lot
you
of
were going to say
places.
something. Go ahead,
There
Eric.
were a lot of places growing, I mean, I had a best friend every single time. And yes, every time there was a move, there was a moment where it's like I was talking to my best friend, we were never going to see each other again. And tears were shed. I mean, it was not just there was no Pollyanna, but once we said goodbye, got on a plane, fresh out of tears, got to the new place.
We're excited.
And started
We're gonna
again.
make
And
another
we
friend.
just, so again, it's not so much that it's that we are in denial about change, but we really do go through what we need to go through to let it go, and then we're on to the next thing. And I do think it is a strength for veterans as well as anybody who's been in a military family, just learns how to do that.
All of them, because I think you've been tested in a crucible, whether you're a spouse, a dependent, a military. So, and a lot of people have never had that experience. They've never had those stresses and those conditions, and they are hard. But obviously we're sitting here telling you that you can do it, and many people do. So yeah, huge strength. I would say absolutely.
I love this conversation because you're helping to educate leaders inside of organizations on how then we need to perceive sometimes your reactions and your responses that we don't think are normal or common, right? And so understanding where you're coming from, you have come out of like life and death situations. And so whenever change happens, it's like you just said, V, if anybody's shooting at me, it's not a life and death situation. We're going to be all right. Right. So yeah, I love the perspective there. And so and then from the flip side of it, and talking to business leaders, now I'm talking to veterans and civilian who've now transitioned into civilian life. You're hearing some of the skills and competencies and strengths and talents that you can use to celebrate and also to promote yourselves in so many ways. I mean, you talked about, I think all of you said leadership was one of the key skills you walked away with, but I also heard relationship building. You're able to be resilient in the midst of change. Change is common for you. And I also heard too, being able to let go of things and being able to shift and reinvent in the moment. These are awesome things. And then, I heard you mention too about, this has helped me to also appreciate, but also be able to lead a diverse team, assemble a diverse team, be able to appreciate diversity of perspectives and thoughts and backgrounds. And I'm comfortable with it. Whereas other leaders who may have never served in the military may not have had that experience. I love that. And Greg, what I'd love to hear from you, because we already kind of answered why should organizations really proactively seek out, military talent. But I also want to hear a flip side of this is once we're in the organizations, what are some of the common and most harmful stereotypes that veterans encounter, and what do you wish that civilians knew about military veterans?
I'm so glad you asked that question. So, I think the one that I encounter the most is the myth and I want to accentuate that word, the myth that every single veteran has been to combat and that because of that, every single veteran has PTSD.
PTSD.
That
Yep.
is not
Wow,
true.
that's good.
Let's
Yep.
just put that away right now. That is not true.
Mm.
You
I
know,
can't believe that's still out there. Are you kidding me?
well, it is
I
in
mean,
a
I
lot of
was hearing
places.
that
It
years
is.
ago.
Sometimes.
That is a shame.
According to the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control in Atlanta, one of the leading causes of PTSD are car accidents. So it's not that veterans suffer PTSD, human beings suffer PTSD.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even if obviously if you've experienced trauma, but if you've even witnessed it, you can experience PTSD. So that's a big one. Another one is poorly educated. No, sir, no, ma'am. If you're an officer, as V is here, she went in with a college degree, but there's many enlisted folks now that have college degrees as well. As a matter of fact, let me give you some stats here. 89% of veterans aged 25 or more have a high school diploma, compared with only 81% of the general population.
Mm-hmm.
25% of veterans aged 25 and older have a bachelor's degree, compared to only 18% of the general population. Poverty. There is homeless veterans or unhoused veterans. However, they are far beneath the comparison of the general population. And so you've got folks that are in the veteran population that have attained better jobs in many cases, have gone better than their counterparts on the on the civilian side. And there are many representatives, senators, movie stars, Clint Eastwood, Ice-T, Adam Driver, Tom Selleck, Morgan Freeman, Johnny Cash, Drew Carey. The list goes on and on and on and on. There are some very well-known people that we don't realize are veterans and have done exceedingly well.
That's
So
awesome.
yeah, a lot of myths out there. We want to get rid of those and know that the veterans are a pretty amazing population of people and they've done some amazing things.
Add to that, V. Anything else that you'd love for us to know on what are some of those common and most pejorative stereotypes, and then things that we need to know about military service?
Military members, we have been of service, but sometimes people will look down on us because it's almost like you're a servant or serving them.
Mm-hmm.
Where really it was servant leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where we did something that most people in our country won't do. And the strategic mindset that military members have, and that command present, that leadership can do attitude, right? If you look at many military veterans that have gone into the corporate workforce, tons of executives, right? They make great leaders. Why? Because teaching leadership, it can be done. It just takes time and it's challenging. It's tough. And it takes an environment to do that, right? Corporate America can do that. You put a Marine through boot camp, a soldier through basic training, they're a leader on the other side because they have gone through this rigorous gauntlet. And now you want to teach them a technical skill on top of that. Man, that's the easy part. The leadership part, the adaptability, the flexibility. I mean, that's why people bring me in. That's why I have a company right now, right? Because they're trying to, can we get some osmosis going on? How can you
Right.
glean and give some of your leadership skills, talents, ideologies, philosophies, concepts to our people, right?
Yeah.
So there's a huge opportunity to leverage the mindset, the skill set, and the leadership potential and realized potential of veterans. You just have to see it.
Yeah.
And it might be a little bit different onboarding process, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
And adaptability to the culture, because it's different. If you yell duck and it's a bunch of military, everybody's gonna duck.
Yeah.
And then we're gonna ask questions later. Say that in the corporate, why do I have to duck? Heads blown off. I cut that part out. I don't know.
I'd really like to build on V. Your point was so on, and the thing I would just add to that is, I don't know if the general population realizes just how much courage it takes to raise your right hand and swear to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You are basically writing a blank check to the American people, payable up to and including your life. And unfortunately, we lose veterans, we lose service members. Yeah. And so there's a thread of courage here in these people that you are just, it's uncommon. So think about that. I don't care if it's National Guard, Reserve, active duty, whatever. You have that yoke of weight on you until you take that uniform off. That's a pretty amazing human being to have in your organization. So
Absolutely.
just want to add to that. But yeah, V, thanks. That was a great lead, and I just wanted to build on it.
I appreciate
Could I
you.
build on what you just said, Greg?
Sure.
So here's a call to action for the civilian employers among you.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard we want to hire veterans because they're loyal. My answer to that is you got to give them something to be loyal to. You got to give them a reason, and you got to give all your employees and your new hires a reason to be loyal. They're not blindly loyal because they were in the military. They've demonstrated a capacity for deep loyalty, but if you treat them poorly, they're not stupid, they're not sheep, you know,
Exactly.
right?
That
And
part.
and so that's one thing. And then the other thing I would say is, I mean, you haven't turned to me yet, Shirley, but I'm just taking it.
No, you're coming to it.
yeah,
Stay there,
okay,
because
okay.
one of the things I'd love to know too, Emily, with your work, and you're there because you're sort of on the other side of that, is what are some things that companies can do to better support veterans that are entering the workforce, particularly around, adapting to the, corporate culture? How do they transform their culture to be more inviting, to create a greater sense of inclusion and belonging to support our veterans?
Well, I gotta jump off what V said, which is you've got to have an onboarding program. You know, that doesn't mean you have to spend a gazillion dollars. It doesn't mean that it has to take a lot of time. You just need to be a little thoughtful. That at this point now, I've got 20 years of data of very consistent patterns and pitfalls that veterans encounter. So there's no excuse for not taking a minute and doing the things that have been proven by this time to accelerate their learning curve. That's it. And chances are the things that the veterans need to hear about your culture so they're successful are probably things other people also need to hear to be successful.
Right.
But to you, because you've been there for however many years, it's all tacit. You don't have to think about it. You just do it. But so seeing through the eyes of a newcomer, and paying a little bit of attention to the fact that teamwork is a word that is used in both cultures, civilian and military, but they look totally different and they mean totally different things. And if that isn't articulated early in the process, then the amount of assumptions that both parties bring into this marriage is insane. And that's all I need to say about assumptions. It doesn't lead usually to anywhere good. So it's a mutual commitment.
What else about the rest of you? Anything you want to add to that? Or what is it that companies can do better in creating the kind of culture that, like you said, makes them feel wanted, feel included, feel celebrated, valued, and leveraged, with the skills they bring?
Well, I'll share one thing, and this isn't focused specifically at the veteran, but this is focused at creating an organization that a veteran would want to belong to, right?
Yeah.
And that's having clarity, a mission, vision, and a true feeling of team. And we look out for each other. We care about each other. When we were overseas, people would say, "Oh, what do you think about what's going on Capitol Hill or what they're doing?" It's like, we didn't care about any of that stuff. Our single focus was to make sure each of us got home that night, right? So sometimes we feel like that's missing, or I hear veterans when they come up to me, they'll say, "Man, I miss the community. I miss that feeling of crew and family that they had while they were in the military." So that goes back to culture, right? And what Emily and Greg were saying.
That's good.
I think there's a very large business opportunity here. And you've got on one side, you've got the employer, and on one side, you have the veteran population, the job seeker. And there's this delta between it, which we've been talking about, right? And it seems that the better organizations figure out how to bridge that gap, that divide, that delta, and they can bring it together. And so it's not just, you're getting all these amazing things that a veteran can be and who they are and things they can bring to the organization, but there's an opportunity for the organization to learn from them and for the veteran to learn from them as well. when you're coming out of the military, you're coming out of a very, very rigid, well-established framework, chain of command hierarchy, and that works well. But if I'm
Yeah.
going into the ABC company and it's a very much looser kind of an organization, I'm like gonna be a fish out of water, and I'm gonna have a really hard time here, as we've been hearing these, the voices in this conversation. So I think there's learning opportunities on both sides of that, and I think that helps bridge that gap that's between them. And I wish that more organizations did that. Onboarding, mentoring, coaching, sponsorship, ERG, BRG. And when you get into the ERG, BRG conversation, I think one of the amazing things about the veteran population of ERGs or BRGs is the intersectionality of them. Gender, sexual orientation, race, national background, whatever. It's a really complex Swiss Army knife, if you will, of an ERG because of the other connections veterans are going to have with a lot of other different populations. Lots of opportunity, I think, for business.
I've got
I'm gonna
2 more
throw in
questions and
one
then we'll,
thing,
yeah, go
Shirley,
ahead,
if I
Eric.
could. Because it is National Veterans and Military Families Month, I feel like throwing in a word for the spouses as well. Military spouses oftentimes are trying to have a career of their own, but it's really can be difficult because if you are going to keep the family together and you're going to follow your, military partner around the world, is there, you might see someone walk into an interview with a resume a mile long, and every job's only a couple of years. And if you ask them, if I hire you, are you going to leave me in 2 years? The answer very well might be yes. And it's that's
Wow.
not always the ideal candidate for folks. But I tell you what, you're going to get 2 amazing years with a person who's got all of the skills that, not all, but a lot of the skills that we just talked about, all the ones that I talked about. I mean, all the stuff that just comes from moving around and the diversity of spaces and being able to quickly acclimate and all of the things that we've been discussing. Don't sleep on the military spouses because they are also a really rich source of talent that I think a lot of times organizations are not real excited about going after, especially an active duty military spouse. My mom was a school teacher my entire childhood, and when she showed up to a school and saying, "Hey, I'd like a job. Here are the 15 schools I've worked at for 2 or 3 years at a time." A lot of principals weren't too excited to hire her until they called her references and figured out this is one of the best teachers you're ever going to have. And if you can get her for 2 years, you'd be lucky. And those that hired her were. And that's just, just because it's also Military Families Month, and that's kind of my worldview. I wanted to just throw that into the conversation too, because
That's a good
oftentimes the
point.
military spouse is not someone that we talk about enough, I think, during this conversation.
Good point.
They make it possible. All those deployments that happen,
Yep.
all of that.
And when you're hiring, like you said, you're hiring a veteran, you really are having to make sure that you're including all of the aspects, needs, and expectations of the family that comes with that.
Yeah.
This has been a very rich, obviously, I knew that bringing all of you together and, having friends, but also just knowing that you have such great wisdom to share. I'd love to maybe close it out with just a piece of advice, maybe something it could be maybe someone who's considering a career in the military today, or someone who's just coming out of the military and wanting to make that leap into the civilian life. What's your experience? I want to start with V and then go to Greg, because I know the two of you actively served, and then I want to close it out with Eric and Emily. Pieces of advice making that transition.
When you transition out, know that you absolutely have the experience needed to step into whatever facet of life you want. Even if I've had friends that decided they wanted to go back and be surgeons and trauma and all of that and they were so on it with the mindset that they graduated at the top of their class and they just really nailed it. So don't feel insecure about what you don't know. Feel super secure and amazing about what you do know and what you do have, because all those transferable skills are just going to pay off in gold, and you are going to be an asset that your organization loves. Period. In the story. And they'll get rid of other people before they get rid of you.
Excellent. Thank you.
So when I'm working with a veteran and it's transition mentoring, one of the things that I invite them to think about in themselves is I say, consider yourself to be a one-person corporation. And your corporation has value and experience and insights, and don't dismiss any of it. You've done what most Americans have never done and will never do. And so stand on that foundation very firmly, not in a way where you're vain and conceited about it, but that you really earned the title veteran. And I think going into that kind of a process through interview processing or onboarding processing, to have that, like V said, you can do it, you got this. And sometimes we need a little bit of a push or a little bit help there, because it is new, and new is a little scary sometimes. And there's a lot of organizations out there that will help in terms of giving you mentorship and support and whatnot. But your one-person corporation is valid, and you will do this well.
Awesome. Emily?
I very focused on transition as a life experience for veterans. And so I would say to you veterans or service members who are going to be getting out, the transition is not an event that happens one day when you leave service. It can last for years. It's a transformation of who you are, and it's not easy. And there aren't a lot of roadmaps. I'm trying to build roadmaps for you, but there aren't a lot out there. And I want you to know that there is another side of this. When you get to that other side of it, you are going to have an amazing transition story. And the low moments you might be having now, the moments of self-doubt, you didn't get a call back, you haven't gotten a job yet, those are going to be the most inspirational moments of your transition story. So you're in it now, you can't see it, but I can see it, and it's going to be amazing. It's going to help a lot of people.
Last word, Eric?
I would just say, and again, coming from the family perspective of this, sometimes your own story just seems pretty normal because it was your life and you were at the center of it all. But, I would kind of echo a little bit of what Greg is saying if I was talking to another military kid, brat, as I like to say, that your story is kind of amazing. And think about all the things that you picked up with this incredible life that you were gifted to lead from the time that you were born. This amazing gift that has been given to you, and the skills that you've just picked up without even trying. Know what they are so that you can put them to use. It's something I kind of heard shades of from Emily as well. If you don't even realize that you have this incredible skill that employers want, it's hard for you to really exploit that. So know what makes you amazing and capitalize on that.
Absolutely. Well, look, I am very thrilled. I'm very honored for each and every one of you. I knew you were going to be my rock stars. I knew that you were going to bring a lot of wisdom and just some great insights and experiences. Each of you very unique, and each of you bringing unique contributions. So thank you. And for all of you listening, please look them up, connect with them on LinkedIn, go to their websites, and we're going to actually have those posted as well. But I want to say to all of you, this National Veterans and Military Families Month, we recognize and celebrate all of our veterans, and we thank you for your service. Your commitment, your bravery, and your contributions continue to strengthen our country and make our workplaces stronger every day. So thank you again for being with us.
Stay gutsy.
Thank you so much.
Thanks. Great to meet you all.